challenge is, can I grow and make progress? And after a person has accomplished anything in life, then comes the test of gratitude. So we finish off this series, this discussion of spiritual impediments, with what tends to be the final and last impediment that a person will face, which is the ability to remain humble, to be grateful to Allah for whatever they've been able to accomplish, big or small. Okay, as we start now, I want to start with the second question that you guys talked about, and I want to hear your valuable feedback, inshallah. What does ingratitude look like? What are some examples of someone being ungrateful? Bismillah, anyone? Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Um, you're saying that when a person's asking and asking and asking and asking without ever acknowledging what they've been given, right? Okay, beautiful. Yeah. Excessive complaining. Interesting. Can you tell me more about like how that's ingratitude? Answer here is not meant to be given merely verbally or theoretically. The answer here is actually best understood by the way we live our lives. As we go through our daily lives and we look at the world around us, when do we feel deep disappointment? Because disappointment stems from expectation, and expectation usually stems from entitlement. Right? You feel you deserve this. You feel you are entitled to this. Now, no doubt, there will be a certain amount of expectations that are healthy and that you should have. But the question becomes, what are those? What are those things I'm entitled to? A classic example is when we hit a difficulty in life. Some of us can very quickly begin to object. I don't know why this is happening to me. Well, why not? That's my question always. When something goes wrong in my life and I'm like, man, I don't know why. It's like, why not? Why should it not happen? Where were you, O Usman, given a guarantee that you would never have to deal with difficulties in life? Do you have that in writing from Allah? We actually have the total opposite. We have Allah saying to us, we're going to test you, and we're going to test you, and we're going to test you, and we're going to put you through difficulty, and you're going to lose things. There's going to be a shortage of things. So, yeah, that's kind of what's to be expected. There's a really interesting book, recently I was looking through. It's called The Happiness Trap. It's by Russ Harris. It's on ACT, Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. And Harris talks about the idea of, what do you think is a reasonable standard of happiness? Like, what does happiness mean to you? The happiness that people are pursuing. And depending on what you set to be your standard, you can either really set yourself up for being unhappy or maybe actually being deeply fulfilled. And sometimes we set the standard and the bar at an unrealistic level. And then as a result, no wonder we end up deeply, deeply dissatisfied with life. And then we wonder why. Like, I don't know why. Well, maybe your standard from the very get-go is off. Like, what are we entitled to as human beings? That's a question to ask. We were not even entitled to life. Allah gifted us life. That's why it's so important to understand one of Allah's names, Al-Wahhab, the one who gifts. Meaning what we have in our lives, everything is a gift from Allah. Not that, no, Allah owed me this. Allah owes me nothing. And if I can really internalize that Allah does not owe me anything, I can start moving towards a more grateful perspective and attitude towards Allah. Does that make sense? And so, we sometimes feel that we are entitled because we're special. Oftentimes, and that's one of the main challenges of success, is as you become more successful from a specific lens or perspective, it becomes easier to kind of buy into the rhetoric around you, where everyone's like, you're so amazing, you're so special. And think about children who are brought up like that. Like, you're the best. And this child completely like believes it and grows up believing that they deserve everything. They deserve everything. They can begin to feel very entitled, right? It's because they think they're special. Um, and so that's one thing that we could talk about quite a bit is entitlement. Entitlement, we spoke a little bit about this topic when we were speaking about narcissism a few weeks ago, because that's one of the main qualities that stands out in someone who has narcissistic traits, is that they're very entitled. Everybody and everything owes them because of how special they are, how talented they are, how gifted they are. And it's so interesting that the word gifted literally denies entitlement. It's saying what? You're gifted. It was a gift to you. You didn't deserve it. You did not earn it. It was gifted to you. So if you're gifted, that is absolutely no reason to be arrogant or entitled. It's literally in the word. Does that make sense? And so that's one reason for sure why we might not feel like we need to say thank you. And it's a really, really challenging thing is for us if we have entitlement. It's challenging because our relationships will suffer. Not only with human beings, but especially with Allah. Especially with Allah. Our entitlement will really ruin things. Because nobody appreciates that person who, no matter how much you do for them, they never once say thank you. No one appreciates that. And eventually we stop doing good towards that person because they don't even acknowledge it. No matter how much I do, they never even say thank you once. And so we give up. We say, no, I can't make this person happy. And so this is a really serious thing to think about is what do I actually think and how do I behave that reflects my entitlement and what are the expectations I hold? This is another very important discussion, and I'm not going to go off topic, but I'm just going to hint towards it. When we're now, example, getting ready to get married, what are the expectations I go in with? This can really determine whether or not I, from my own subjective perspective, deem my marriage to be satisfying or not. And you'd be surprised. You'd be thinking, no, everyone goes in with really reasonable expectations. Reasonable can mean different things to different people, number one. Number two, because we grew up and spent 20-something years experiencing something as a norm, suddenly you end up in a marriage with someone to whom that is not a norm, and then you're confused as to why they don't do that or why they don't understand that. Unmet, unspoken expectations are a recipe for disaster, are a recipe for disappointment. So that's just with regards to marriage, but you could apply that to life. What are the expectations that I carry with me as I go through life? Interacting with people, going through different stages and different aspects of my life. Because that's going to determine, to a great extent, how satisfied I am. Okay, another reason I might not be grateful is if I feel the person in front of me is obligated to do what they just did. Do you get what I'm saying? So a lot of times we'll go somewhere, it's someone's job to do something. So when they do their job, we're kind of like, yeah, thanks. We're not really genuinely thankful because they didn't do me a favor. It was their job. But there's a difference here. Because someone might say, well, that's true, isn't it? It is their job. So like, why do I need to be thankful? They didn't do me a favor. They're getting paid to do that. No, but it's not so much about whether or not it's their job. Sure, it is their job. The question is, do you deserve it? What have you done to deserve it? What have you done to deserve it as an individual? Not much. Sure, it's the policy that as a customer you're entitled to good service or whatever, let's say. That's a policy. But as a human being, could the tables not be turned and you be in their shoes? And maybe you have a job that's, pays a lot more. So you walk in there really feeling like you're superior to that person. And so when they help you out, you're kind of like, yeah, whatever. Because you don't value them. You don't value the role they're playing, the job that they're, performing. You don't value it. And you feel, because of your own background, entitled. Imagine someone who walks in really feeling like, even if it's somebody's job, that's their job. Do I deserve, am I entitled to special treatment? No. And so if I receive good treatment, I'm grateful. Thank you so much for doing your job well. I appreciate that. I'm happy. I'm grateful to Allah to be in a position where I'm receiving service and I'm not having to give it in this specific dynamic. There's nothing against giving service. But the point is, to be in a position to receive it is something to be grateful for. Because we're not deserving of anything in these situations, inherently speaking. As a policy, sure. Inherently, am I born with some special status that makes me entitled? No. So I appreciate the people around me who are able to do all these things to make my life what it is. Without them, maybe a lot of my life would be difficult. And that's an incredible system of Allah, that He's made the world a place where people have different interests. And because people have different interests, they get into things such that they contribute to our society. Because we need everybody. We need everybody to contribute in different ways so that I don't have to do everything. Right? So, example, my nephew from a really young age, he just loved cars. I don't know. He just loved cars. And he's a mechanic today. I'm grateful to have someone like him that I can go to when my car is broken, because I can't do it. Not everybody can come give these talks and go to give the khutbah, but not everybody can fix cars. And so maybe he'll come ask me about Islam, but I need him to fix my car. And then I need people over there. I need people doing that. And Allah created a system where people just have different interests. And they're just into different things that maybe I'm not into, but hey, I appreciate that you do that, because without you, I don't know how I would be living my life in certain aspects. I have a friend, he's, just decided one day he wanted to be a barber. That's what he's a barber. And I'm so happy. I'm grateful to the guy, because without him, I'm going to have to go somewhere else. Right? I'm grateful to this brother that it's his passion. Is it my passion? No. So Allah gifts people with different passions. And so I'm just grateful that we have these systems and people have taken different interests in things. Another reason why we sometimes might fail to express gratitude is I don't realize the role that others have played in making something happen. So, classic example. Today, here I am giving this talk. So people might come to me and say, Shaykh, thank you so much for the talk. And if I get deluded in going and go, yes, it's all me. I gave the talk and that's, I'm losing sight of the fact that this talk would not happen if we didn't have somebody doing this, if we didn't have somebody taking care of the mic system, if we didn't have people taking care of the masjid, if we didn't have people coming to set up the place, we didn't have people on social media marketing the event, like the volunteers, or the different people working behind the scenes to make it happen. I could get deluded into thinking, this is all me. And I could do that because I lose sight of the fact that so many other people played a role in making this happen. And that sometimes that happens. If you're the one who ultimately gets credit, this is why we always love to see people stand up. They receive the reward or the award and they say what? They say, you know what? I want to thank my parents. They received the award, but they said what? I know I didn't get here by myself. Dr. Cornel West, right? I love this line of his. He says, I am who I am today because somebody loved me. You are where you are in life because along the way people cared for you. And if they didn't care for you, you would not be here. Somebody cared in some capacity. Whether it's your parents or your caregivers growing up in that capacity, whether it was a teacher who inspired you. And almost every inspirational teacher, their unique quality compared to other teachers is the amount that they care. Think about that. And somehow some teacher saw something in you and said, hey, you have a real talent. And then you were inspired and you pursued this career in your life. And that's where you are today because somebody cared for you. So we love when we see somebody reach the top in their career and they don't forget those who helped them get there. But it's easy to forget that. Because we come from an individualistic culture where we actually emphasize the individual over the collective. We emphasize the individual over the collective to a large extent. That's why a lot of secular therapy, what you'll hear, my parents, I'm struggling with my parents, cut them off. And coming from our more collectivistic, Islam strikes a really beautiful balance between not ignoring the individual but also not ignoring the collective. Champion, and they're interviewed. So, you did amazing, you, right? Like everything you did and how it's amazing what you did. And the first thing they say is, Alhamdulillah, all praise belongs to Allah. That's a powerful statement. To deny your individuality. It's not me. Whatever I have is from Allah. And it's my family and my parents and my team, all the people around me. So that's one reason why we could also, we can struggle with being grateful is because we don't recognize the role others play in the work that we're doing. Here's a really, really challenging one. It's if we feel that we are victims, then we might feel like the world owes me. The world owes me. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Have you ever met someone like that? Someone who really believes that they are a victim to their circumstances. They're a victim to the people around them who mistreated them. Or maybe they're a victim to Allah's decisions. And as a result, they feel like, well, everybody owes me their sympathy, or everybody owes me, or the world owes me. The world owes it to me to make up for the wrong that's been done to me. And so they go around expecting everybody to acknowledge their pain and to work around their pain and to try to, soothe their pain. And so that's where we have to be really careful. How do we weave our narratives and stories together? If I ask you, tell me the story of your life, what would you say? That's why, journaling can be in many forms, but one form of journaling obviously is to just let out your thoughts onto a piece of paper or, into a journal. Another is what if I were to sit down and just write out what happened? You might say, like, what's the benefit of that? Okay, fine, I wrote it down, then what? And if you were to share that with someone else who was to examine it and say, I noticed when this happened, you immediately assumed that person intentionally did what they did. In your story, when you wrote the story, because we are storytellers, we don't think about life as just facts, incidents. We tell a story. We weave everything into a story. That's just the way that we function. If I ask you, who are you? Tell me you'll tell me a story. You'll say, I was born here to a family. You'll give me the setting, and then, when I was 2 years old, this happened. This drastically changed my life. My direction in life went this way. Then I have a villain enter my story. I had a younger brother, right? and this villain came, and then after that my life was terrible for 5 years. Is your brother actually the villain? Really? Who's the villain? Who's the hero? Usually, usually a lot of people, especially people who see themselves as victims, they are the heroes, always. Sometimes, though, and we need to examine this, is what if we see ourselves as the villains? And this is not uncommon. For people to see themselves as the problem. And oftentimes they've been convinced that if it weren't for them, other people's lives would be good. So they go through life really feeling terrible about themselves. And again, you can go back to the story and say, wait, who drew you as the villain in this story? You know what's really challenging is when you don't know what to write in your story. So something happens. I'll give you an example. You go to school and your best friend walks right by you, does not even acknowledge you. And if I were to ask you in that moment, pause, write down what just happened, you would say, my best friend walked. That we care. We want people to notice that we did something. Like as a parent, I'm telling you, when I buy something for my kids, obviously I want them to be happy, but my greatest reward is when they look at me with like love in their eyes and they're like, thank you. And I was like, yo, you know, all that money we spent, which was probably way too much, it's worth it. It's worth it. You say thank you, like, yo. It's the sentiment that they saw me. They didn't just see the toy. They saw me behind the toy. That's all I want. That's all I want. I want you to notice that behind this toy is a human being who loves you and cares about you. And if you could see that, it makes it worth it. Does that make sense? There's a lot we could talk about when it comes to ourselves. What about the blessing itself that someone brings to us? Maybe, and let's take an example here. Maybe because our value system is a little flawed, we don't appreciate certain blessings, certain gifts. You know, when the people of paradise go to paradise, the Quran describes in multiple places the appreciation they will express. They'll say, Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah alladhi sadaqana wa'adah. Right? But there's one beautiful one. Alhamdulillah alladhi hadana lihada. وَمَا كُنَّا لِنَهْتَدِيَ لَوْلَا أَنْ هَدَانَ اللَّهِ. They will say, all praise belongs to Allah who guided us to this path. And we would not have been able to be guided if He had not led us to this path. Because we'll realize on that day the value of Iman. When's the last time we thanked Allah for Iman? Oh Allah, I'm just grateful to have faith and belief in you, Iman. When's the last time? And sometimes we're really appreciative of other things, even when our Iman suffers. And so, if someone were to, example, buy us something that we really like, we love them so much. We'd be like, thank you so much. Because I really value this thing that you bought me. And then you have a friend who reminds you, hey, make sure you pray Fajr. And we're like, dude, nagging all the time. We don't appreciate that. Umar radiallahu anhu, he used to say, may Allah have mercy on the person who shows me my flaws. Why would he be grateful for that? What did he value? That he was making dua for people who pointed out his flaws. He valued self-improvement. He valued growth. So anyone who helped contribute to his growth, he was like, man, I appreciate you. Do you get what I'm saying? And if we don't value something, then we're going to struggle to be grateful for when someone either says it to us or gives it to us, because we just won't value it. And that's where we need to examine our value systems. What do we value the most? And we could say, like, I value Iman. The thing is, when someone says something beneficial for our Iman, do we value that? When someone highlights a mistake of ours, are we grateful? Like, hey, thank you so much for pointing that out. Imagine you're about to hand in a major assignment, and someone catches you before you hand it in and goes, hey, You forgot that. You're like, yo, thank you so much for pointing that out, man, because otherwise I would have lost marks, and I value my education and the degree I get. And you helped me there. There are people saving us, trying to remind us that we got mistakes in our spiritual exam that we're writing every day in life, that we're taking with us to the grave. And they're reminding us, like, hey, don't do those are the best friends you have. Those are the best friends that we have. I mean, we appreciate people. How many of y'all have a friend who, whenever there is a sale going on, they send it to you? Anyone have a friend like that? We appreciate them, yo. They're like, yo, did you check this out? Did you check that out? And you're like, oh, I didn't know. Any of y'all like old enough to be on, what's that, Canadian red flag deals? What is it, red flag deals? You know? Do people still do that? I know like people who are a little bit older do it. Does this age group do it? No? They're like, no, we don't need that. Right? You get what I'm saying though? Like, we appreciate when someone points that out to us because we value how they saved us money. What if they saved us, contentment of the heart by guiding us towards what was beneficial for us? Probably all of us can remember a time when a friend gave us a really hard, raw truth that in the moment we were probably even upset. But down the line, we looked at them and were like, you're a real friend. Because today, if I didn't have you, if I didn't have the advice you gave me, I might not be who I am today. It was not pleasant hearing it, but I needed it. Right? That's just the reality. And one of the last things I'll mention about this is that sometimes we don't notice the blessings. That's the issue. In Arabic, they say, afatun ni'am al-ilf. One of the real difficult things about blessings, or when we struggle with blessings, when we become accustomed to them. In any relationship, guys, I can't emphasize this enough, is we stop being grateful to the other person and expressing our appreciation when we become accustomed to it. Do you get what I'm saying? And everyone loves appreciation. Everyone loves it. Because it's just acknowledging your contribution. So that's why in the first month, people are so generous with compliments towards their spouse. The first month, oh, thank you so much for making that meal, and thank you so much for this, and thank you for buying this. And they're just mad, because they're not accustomed to it. So often, they never had someone do this for them like that. So they're just mad appreciative. But 2 months in, you're just used to it now. Of course she's going to do that. Of course he's going to do that. And we stop appreciating. And then we wonder why we start to feel very disrespected or unappreciated. Because we got used to it. We've become accustomed to it. And that's one of the challenges, is to remain cognizant of the blessings that we have, that we may have had for a long time. For a long time. You get what I'm saying? Because those are the hardest blessings to acknowledge. The ones that we've had for such a long time. Okay, we have to remember that every blessing is a test. And we're tested by our reactions. This is where we have the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he said, every situation for the believer is potentially good for them. If it's goodness, then what does the person do? Expresses gratitude, and so it's good for them. Notice that. The Prophet ﷺ said, if something in asabethu sarra. Sarra is like something that makes you feel good. He says, if something that makes you feel good comes your way, and in reaction to that you're grateful, then it's good for you. What would that mean? That imagine something really, really pleasant came into your life. So you absolutely find it so enjoyable. Is it good? Not necessarily. It's not necessarily good. And that's really, this is a challenging one, guys. This is a challenging one. We cannot define the value of things based on how they make us feel. The value of things is determined, according to this hadith, is determined by our reactions to them. Something really enjoyable comes along and we're grateful, then only is it actually good. Something painful comes along. Is it bad? What's your reaction to it? It can still be good for you if you react with patience. And so we have to really think about the blessings that come into our lives. Do they take us closer to Allah or further away? That's something really, the scholars have mentioned, and multiple scholars have written this, that it should never be that we end up going further away from Allah through the very blessings that He gifted us. Allah blessed you with a spouse, and now you're so distracted by that spouse that you forget Allah. I was talking to somebody recently. You know what they're telling me? They're telling me how they introduced two people. Hey, like they introduced two people, and they became such good friends they forgot about this dude. And they were heartbroken. They're like, these two people only know each other because of me. So how are you gonna like use the connection that I facilitated to forget about me? They felt betrayed. Do you understand that? Allah brings a blessing in our life, and then we use the blessing to move further away from Allah. That's when that blessing, we just failed the blessing. We just failed the test of that blessing. I want to share with you a story narrated by Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh. Some of you might know this story, but it's a really, really profound story. It's a story about three men from the Banu Israel. One was a person who has a skin condition, one was someone who was bald, one was someone who was blind. And one day Allah decided to test them. So He sent an angel to first the angel came to the person who had a skin condition. And he said, what's the most beloved thing to you? This person was like, man, if I just had healthy, glowing skin, right? And if I could just have some wealth, because I'm not that rich. So the angel passed his hand over the person. The person was healed, had beautiful skin. He said, okay, you said you wanted money. What kind of money can I give you? Like, which animal could I give you? He says, well, I really like camels. Okay, here's camels. He gave him a pregnant camel. And then he comes to the person that, doesn't have hair, says, what would you want? He says, I would love beautiful hair. It's okay, fine, and some wealth. So he heals him, and now he has hair growing. He said, what kind of animal do you want? He names like cows, and he goes to the third person as well. Same thing, what would you like? Well, I just want my sight back. I want to be able to see. Gives them perfect vision. Gives them, again, a pregnant animal. So all three of them now have exactly what they wanted deeply. Let's pause here in the story. Let's find ourselves in the story. We don't read stories for the sake of stories. We read stories to find ourselves in the stories. How many of us right now deeply, deeply desire or yearn for something in our lives? Right? Maybe it's a friend. We desire a friend who understands us, who gets us, who sees us. Or maybe it's a companion. Or maybe it's a certain position in a career so that I could finally feel accomplished. There's so many of us will have something deep down that we deeply desire. And lo and behold, maybe we end up getting it. Maybe 5-10 years ago, we really wished for something. And today we have that thing. Think about it. Think about it. Okay. What then does Allah do? He then sends the angel again later on in the form of a really poor person. This poor man comes up first to the person who has, the blind person. And he says to him, he comes to the person with a skin condition. And he says, Rajulun miskin. He says, I'm going through a really tough patch in life. I'm a traveler. All of my provisions have run out. And I don't have any way to reach my destination. All I'm asking for is by the one who gave you, yeah, by the one who gave you this beautiful skin, in the name of that being, I ask you to just give me an animal that I can use to reach my destination. And see, those pregnant animals, all three of them gave birth. So each of these three people now had a whole herd of animals. And what does this man say? He says, "Inna al-huquqa kathira." He says, "Man, I got a lot of bills to pay. I have a lot of bills. I have too many things I need to spend money on. I don't have anything for you." This man, this angel who comes in the form of a really poor man, he says, "Wait, you look kind of familiar. Didn't you used to have a skin condition? And then Allah blessed you with this skin?" And you know what this man says? No, 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 no. This is genetic. He literally says that. He's just genetic. I was passed down from my ancestors. No, no, no. And this poor man says, "If you're lying, may Allah take you back to the state you were in before." And he does the same thing with the second person. Comes to him, says, "Hey, I need something. Can you give me something?" "No, I can't give you anything." "Well, why not?" "Because I have a lot of bills to pay." So wait, didn't you used to have a problem? Like you could not, you didn't have any hair. Allah blessed you with hair. He said, "No, no, that's not me." And the same thing, kabiran an kabirin, he says, "I received this genetically from my ancestors." Each time they denied their previous condition. Allah blessed them and they became so deceived and deluded by their blessing that they forgot their old state and they could no longer empathize with those who were in their shoes. The shoes they were in yesterday, when someone came to them today in those shoes, they could not empathize. And finally, they come to the man who's blind. Same story. So he says, "By the one, I ask you in the name of the one who gave you this amazing vision, please give me something." You know what this man says? He says, "You know what?" He looks at him and he sees himself in him. He says, "I was blind and Allah blessed me with this." He says, "All these animals? I was poor. Allah blessed me with it. And I see that Allah sent you my way. فَخُذْ مَا شِئْتَ وَدَعْ مَا شِئْتَ." Take whatever you want and leave whatever you want. I'm not going to be upset. If you take it all, I won't be upset. Because the one who gave it to me, he sent you towards me. Take what you want." And then the man says to him, "Don't worry, keep your animals, man. I was just sent to you by Allah as a test. And you've passed the test. And the other two people, they failed." This man was grateful. He never forgot his previous state. He never forgot how far he'd come. And so when he looked at the people around him, maybe there was a point in our lives where we were not as stable in some aspect of our lives as we are today. The responsibility of that stability is to not forget those who currently are unstable in the way that we were unstable yesterday. Sometimes we forget that though. Hey, I had to grind for it. You grind for it yourself. No, Allah blessed you with the ability to overcome. Do not turn your back on those who are in the same shoes you were in yesterday. And I really think Allah Ta'ala puts us in situations where we experience a lot of pain and we're able to overcome it. And then we feel the pain in a way that people who haven't been through that do not feel it. And so, you see people like that. It's very common. They'll go into like the mental health field. Why? Because I struggled with mental health. I know what it's like to struggle. And I don't want other people to struggle. I was able to kind of, recover and heal. So now I want to be there for the people that are struggling because I know what it's like to struggle. Do you get that? That's a form of gratitude. That's a form of, Ya Allah, you've blessed me with this. I will use it to give back. That's passing the test of the blessing. Ibn Ata'illah, he says, مَنْ لَمْ يُقْبِلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ بِمُلَاطَفَاتِ الْإِحْسَانِ قِيدَ إِلَيْهِ بِسَلَاسِلِ الْإِمْتِحَانِ. He says, subhanallah, he says, the one who is not brought to Allah through ease will be dragged towards Allah through difficulty. We have to go back to Allah, connect with Him. And if Allah sends good our way and we don't use that to connect with Him, He will, out of His mercy, send difficulties our way. So we will feel obliged to turn back to Him. Why? And as parents, I think those who are parents know what I'm talking about. Right? You know when you tell your child really nicely, hey, please go brush your teeth. They don't do it. You tell them again, hey, please go brush your teeth. They don't brush their teeth. And eventually you're like, hey, and your tone changes and you become a little bit more stern. They're like, hey, why are you yelling at me? It's like, dude, I tried to tell you nicely, man, but you didn't listen. I had to get a little bit stern because you just weren't listening. And so sometimes we get upset with Allah. Ya Allah, why all these difficulties? Because you had all these blessings and you were not turning to Him through the blessing. Does that make sense? I want to read a poem to you. Y'all like poems? Who's ever read Robert Frost? Frost is great. He has a nice one called The Fear of God. He says, if you should rise from nowhere up to somewhere, from being no one up to being someone, be sure to keep repeating to yourself, you owe. We see the world not as it is, but as we are. What do I mean by that? I mean that in life, we selectively get to choose where we put our attention. And definitely it's going to be easier for some people and harder for others. I mean, we all have a sensitivity to pain, but especially if someone's, they score high on neuroticism, they're especially sensitive to negative emotions. So it's hard for them to notice the good because they feel it so deeply, the negative side of it. But there will be times in life where we will be going through difficult times and we begin to develop this filter. It's a bias, it's a cognitive bias, where we only notice the negative. Because we start to develop beliefs about the world. The world is a terrible place, people are not trustworthy. And that becomes the filters through which we look at life. It's a cognitive distortion. You can look into this. Filtering. So we filter out all the good. Have you ever seen someone, for example, who believes they're not intelligent? I'm not smart. Then they ace the test. What do you do there? Oh, it's a fluke. They would rather maintain their filter, which their filter is, I am not smart. That's my outlook on life. I'm not smart. Any disconfirming evidence, rejected. It was a fluke. By accident. Teacher was being nice to me. Maybe they made a mistake in marking. And every single test you ace. Yeah, maybe this class is just really easy. No, but everybody else is failing. Yeah, they're not trying. Like, everything filtered out. The only thing I can see, and the only thing I accept, is that I'm not smart. This is filtering. And we have to be careful with this, because if you have a filter on, if you recognize somebody who has a filter, you might try to change their opinion about one thing. But then, because it's a filter, it's going to pop up over here and over here. It's like someone who has green glasses, like green tinted. You show them that's not green. Okay, that's not green. But that's green, and that's green. And what, you're going to run around and explain to them that everything is not green? Tell them take off the filter. And you recognize it's not all green. So what the Quran tells us is not that life is great. The Quran does not say life is just amazing, there actually is nothing terrible in life. No. What the Quran challenges us is to come to terms with the reality of the world. That there will be good, and simultaneously there will be difficult times. Our mistake is to become so obsessed with the difficulties and the pain that we begin to deny the good. Right? We fixate on the negative. We filter out all the good. Gratitude. This is the process of actively recalling the good that we might have neglected. The good that we might be ignoring, overlooking. Does that make sense? And hold on here, because you might say, man, what are you trying to say? That in all my difficult times, I should just look for the good? That seems a little invalidating. Like, what about my pain? It feels like our pain's not important. It's not justified. I should just, hear the birds chirp. I have all these problems, and you're just telling me, Shaykh, go listen to the birds chirp and watch the sunrise. That doesn't seem very acknowledging. No, 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 no. That's not what we're saying here. We're saying our challenge is, can we remain objective? Gratitude is not to say everything's great. No, no, no. My life's falling apart, but no, everything's great. That's not what gratitude is. Gratitude is to remain objective. I have pain in my life, and I'm going through a difficult time, but I'm not going to start denying that I still have so many beautiful things to be grateful for. Remain objective. That's the challenge of gratitude. Do not ignore and deny the blessings of Allah that you are still going through despite all your pain. And your pain is real and is valid. And gratitude is not to deny your pain. Gratitude is to ensure that you don't deny the good whilst being fixated on the pain. Does that make sense? That's the challenge of gratitude, and for all of us in our lives. All right, we'll stop here, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the ability to always, always remain cognizant of the blessings in our lives so that we can be grateful to Allah for whatever and for everything that we have. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallama wa baraka ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Jazakumullahu khairan to everybody for coming out. Next week, inshallah, we will start our next series, inshallah, and it will be on the fruits of faith, inshallah. All right, we'll see you then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah